Peter Lehmann was larger than life. He was a community-orientated man. He was a fifth-generation Boroson. So if you see our Boroson range out there, this is where that Boroson term comes from. Just like, that's how he identified himself, essentially. He finished school when he was 17 and came out of school not knowing what he was going to do.
Today we're talking to a Barossa-born winemaker that's now steering one of Australia's largest wine houses, Peter Lehmann. We're talking to Senior Winemaker Brett Schutz. I'm Jason.
And I'm Trent. We're here on an unapologetically unprofessional, unfiltered wine journey. We're saying here, Jace.
Our saying is drink more, try more, learn more. And don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Brett, thanks for joining us.
That's great to be here, guys.
We want to dive into your story, dive into Peter Lehmann. First of all, instead of breaking glasses, we want to do an icebreaker. So we'll start off with those questions. I'll pass to Trent.
So good. First one, Brett. Most memorable wine or most memorable wine moment?
I think it's probably more of a moment for me. Back in 2016, the Adelaide Review had a wine comp called the Hot 100, and it was all about drinkability. So in modern wine shows where we're analysing wines for their structure, looking for faults, etc. But this wine show sort of was completely different, and it was all about finding the wine that was the most enjoyable, most drinkable with food. And rather than all studying wines one by one and in a silent environment, we had a jukebox playing. There's music and food, and it was just the environment to how do we find the most drinkable wine. And we actually won that in 2015 when I was working in the Clare Valley and with the 2015 Sangiovese. And then as a bonus from that, I got to judge the next year. So that was a really cool experience. And so it's something that really opened my eyes to the amount of diverse wine styles that are out there.
So how does that work? Everyone's drunk, everyone's eating, got music.
Yeah, well, I think it's a real life experience. So when you're out and about enjoying wines, you're drinking wines to enjoy them with good company and good food. And, it was really like for like. It was,
Is that still happening or is it stopped now?
Unfortunately, the review sort of ended and did that publication. Yeah. And it was really well done. It was a beautiful booklet, and you could get the book and go through these wines looking for them throughout South Australia. And I was really sad to see it go. But hopefully someone brings it back one day. It'd be a great idea.
Great. What's the last glass of wine that you had?
Well, I reckon it was a Chardonnay from Hilltops. I'm trying to think.
Yeah,
it was just a random bottle we picked off the wine list a couple of nights ago while I was over here in Sydney doing some other work. So
exploring New South Wales wine.
Just touching base with all the different styles of Chardonnay that are out there. Yeah.
And how does it compare to South Australia?
South Australia is really quite interesting. I find that we're going more down that real reductive phase. Yeah. So this one was really quite pure and very fresh acidity. Where we're playing around with a little bit of funk and a little bit more ripeness. So a bit different, but it's an open-ended question, the Chardonnay thing at the moment. So I find it interesting to explore them when I'm out and about.
Okay. As you kind of mentioned, big thing about wine is also food as well. What's the food that instantly takes you back to your childhood?
Gee, for me, as a Schutz in the Barossa, my parents always, meat and three veg type meals. So
is that German pork knuckle sauerkraut?
Not quite that traditional, but steak, veggies, and potato. But I think my grandparents on one side of the family, my grandmother who's still around, she was Indonesian, is Indonesian.
Oh, wow.
And my grandfather's Dutch. So I've always had those sort of influential foods floating around in my life. And now it's sort of driven me toward that general Asian fare that I love to explore as well. So my food culture's all over the place.
And helps broaden your palate as well, right?
Yeah, it really does. It really does make the wine journey enjoyable too. Yeah, absolutely.
We had this question, we had this question recently about what's the best Asian fare. In your opinion, what's the best Asian cuisine?
I think mine's more emotionally driven. It's a couple of years ago through work, I spent a week in Japan. Yeah. And so sashimi and really good traditional, authentic Japanese food. I absolutely love. But, I still love going back to Szechuan. That spicy, really, and Cantonese traditional style. Probably my top three.
With some Peter Lehmann Riesling, right?
Riesling and Rosé. I find the Rosé is a great match for any time you go to an Asian restaurant and you go, oh, gee, which one am I going to have? It's like Rosé is definitely
the all-rounder.
go-to. Yeah, safe bet.
Next one. Person past or present they love to have a bottle of wine with, and what bottle would you pick?
Oh, well, I think my grandparents are a big influence. So my late grandfather, my opa, being Dutch, was really heavily involved in the face of wine businesses. And he was always, really quite proud of pushing us to be doing, as kids, out and about, presenting ourselves in front of people. And I think I've got him probably to thank for a lot of my stand-up routines throughout what I'm doing in my business now with Peter Lehmann.
Yeah.
But, they were really passionate about wine, both my grandparents. And so it'd be lovely to go back and share some of what we're making at the moment with them, and really, really quite proud of where we're steering the brand. And I think they'd be really pleased and proud of what I've achieved. So I'd love to.
Any particular wine that you would pick?
Well, both of them would be fans of a nice big bold red. So I'd be taking one of our current bottles of probably a fresh one, like our Hill and Valley Shiraz, because I sort of had a hand in making that one from start to finish. But then, an older Shiraz, like our Stonewell, one that I've been able to sort of finish polishing and getting ready for bottle. Demonstration of the difference in styles. And
Next one. Unique or ultimate food and wine pairing?
Well, my ultimate food and wine pairing would be a fresh Riesling current vintage with freshly shucked oysters.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a standard sort of pairing, but I can't see much better than that. Second to that would be lightly grilled whiting with Riesling, or a nice fresh rosé on a summer beach holiday.
I think I say sparkling Shiraz with breakfast or something.
Sparkling Shiraz with breakfast, although I don't know if we need to be too concerned about responsible drinking. But it's definitely a nice little treat to have our sparkling Shiraz with a breakfast. Eggs and bacon, people would say. Yeah.
If you could bottle a moment in your life, like a vintage, what vintage would that be and why?
Oh dear. I think for me, I'll never ever forget my first vintage out of uni was up in the Riverland for Kingston Estate. And I was sort of hired as a vintage winemaker, thrown into night shift. And I was told we would have 450 tonnes of Merlot coming that night, and I had to deal with it, basically.
Yeah.
And all the other staff walked away after day shift. I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? So it was really like a bit of a coming of age kind of thing, or a bit of a snapped reality to say right, you're in the big game here now. There's no more, you got to work and you got to make it work. And so that's something that will always stick in my mind as something I've bottled up in there and we'll keep.
And how did it feel once you got over those 450 tonnes of Merlot?
Yeah, no, it was a long night. No, it was a reasonably interesting vintage, and what made it difficult was I was living away from home up there in the Riverland, and I was halfway through planning a wedding as well, and it was all very quite stressful, and this probably started my anxiety journey, I think. But no, it was really quite a worthwhile experience, I think.
Yeah. Okay, last one. What's the biggest lesson learned on your wine journey?
I've really got to know more and more about how vineyards work since being with Peter Lehmann, and more about how to grow quality fruit. And I think the lesson learnt there is that anyone that is going to be a good winemaker needs to have a good connection with the land, a good connection with the vineyard, a good understanding of how to treat soil health and vine health and light inception into the canopy. All the different facets of how you can be a good grower needs to be understood by the winemaker, and that's a lesson that I'd love to make sure that all future winemakers understand and have the opportunity to be involved in that process.
So kind of part winemaker, part viticulturist as well.
I think that's, and I reckon that's the benefit of being a small producer too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the winemakers are the ones that are also on the tractor on the weekends, putting out that spray because there's a weather event coming, or they're the ones out there attending the wine industry forums about how to keep my soil healthy, etc. But then they have to go back to the winery later that day and rack some barrels and, put together a wine. So I think that's pretty critical, particularly for those businesses, but even us in larger businesses need to understand that.
Very cool. That's the Icebreaker Questions.
Great.
So let's get onto your story. And if we go right to the start, Barossa, born and raised.
Yeah.
How influential was wine and vineyards in your childhood memories?
For me, it was always pretty exciting, that vintage roll around where we had the Vintage Festival was always the kickoff, where you'd have floats of all the people, businesses in the Barossa, and they'd drive from Newry to Tanunda, or the next year it'd be from Newry up back to Tanunda. And the Barossa Valley Way, as it's called, would be lined with people, their kids, families, out having picnics, celebrating the floats. It was always a bit exciting to see the gourmet weekends as they were back those days too, and the events and the tourism. And it was really quite a proud time to be involved in the Barossa. You have people coming to your region to visit and see and learn what you're doing. And so as a kid, see this activity around, and we had vineyards around opposite where we were living in the Western Barossa in Grenache. And I would be involved too as, in probably later, early teens, in the vineyard side of things with friends, working their vineyards for them and with them and planting vineyards. And I suppose all that culminated to how important the industry was to sustain a community. And the Barossa or the Clare or any community of wine people, it relies on that history, that heritage, and the input from visitors alike. So, all of that as a kid growing up was probably important and sort of paved my way through, coupled with quite an interest in science and chemistry in general, and a strive for quality, a bit of a perfectionism sort of OCD characteristic that goes on back up in here sometimes. And it all just means that you want to craft something for people to enjoy and something that's natural from around you and the environment you live in, and it all just fit together like a nice puzzle, really.
Yeah, but that's science, chemistry. But there is a moment where you think, I want to be a winemaker though as well, rather than something else like a viticulturist or something else.
And that was quite interesting because when I went through uni, the first 2 years it was a Bachelor of Ag Science, and then in the last 2 years you determined whether you wanted to go down the viticulture path or the enology winemaking path. And for me, I was always sort of heading toward the winemaking path, but I really became interested to know at the time why we were cutting up frogs in Adelaide. But that was part of the biology side of things. But interested to know whether I'd probably be inclined to work down that more natural path of day-to-day crafting the vines into producing the best fruit. Or I think probably about 85% of me was still down the winemaking path down the end. In the 90s, winemakers were sort of put on a bit of a pedestal, and it was a really celebrated industry that was quite profitable and quite lucrative. Since then, since I got into the industry, it's all gone backwards. So I don't know what that's telling you.
It's got nothing to do with you. Let's say that.
No, not backwards. It's just become harder and more difficult. The competition has certainly increased heavily in the last 10 to 15 years. And so, wine businesses have to be very, very smart about how they're operating.
I still reckon winemakers are seen as rock stars at the end of the day. There's a few you're like, these guys are pretty special celebrities from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, well, I think, there was that generation that really put themselves out there. And there are still some of those guys getting around today that have that credibility and they have that open flamboyancy that really draws people into the industry.
Yeah.
For us, we were crafted around a little bit more of a, I suppose, analytical way of conducting ourselves and conducting business. And that was probably driven by university and how serious and PC we have to be these days. I mean, we can't get out and about, being really too overt as far as I'm concerned. But those personalities, we have a lot to thank for bringing people toward the industry and for creating that awareness. Yeah.
You think we should do the top 100 winemakers, is it?
We should.
That'd be quite tricky. You'll have to put us into age brackets.
Was that millennials, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z?
Yeah, there are a lot of us out there.
Now, if we continue on with your career and we just think about you worked at Dorian Estate, Constellation Wines in Clare, Tamar Ridge in Tassie, Tim Adams, Mr. Mick at Clare, probably a few others out there. So you've had great experience out there. If you could pick like one or two top lessons that you picked up from your experience that shaped your wine making career, what would those be?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think wherever you are, there's always something to learn. So while I was in Tasmania, for example, I learned how carefully you have to treat fruit that's been affected by conditions, wet, mildewy type conditions. So I learned a lot about troubleshooting in that job. In the Riverland, I learned a lot about, in those first days, all about the throughput and efficiency and keeping onto a bit of a target. In Clare, I learned a lot about making fine Riesling. And I think fine Riesling is such an unforgiving character. If you one slip up and you can ruin the wine. So from there, in Clare, really crafted that attention to detail side of the winemaking. Prior to that, Dorian was sort of my first Barossa experience. And so in that job, I was a bit of a TA. So I had a lot to do more with yeast propagation, yeast culturing, finishing wines to make them ready for bottle. So in each of the roles, I've sort of focused on particular things, I guess, and finding now in my role at Peter Lehmann, I'm sort of crafting wines by day and then doing a lot of PR stuff by night, which I really quite enjoy kicking around the world and sharing the love of wine and their experience. So, which I hadn't done a heap of prior to this. So, each job brings a particularly different skill that you can hone, and but it's great to be able to culminate them over 20 odd years, and really see where you've been. Look back at and this is probably the first time I've had a chance to actually think through it and look back and go, oh, this is what I've done there, and this is where we're going, and this is the sort of skill I can bring, and where identify some areas that I want to try and improve or learn more of in the future, because you can never stop.
You mentioned like your kind of roots around science and chemistry. Is that still the case, or you kind of now take influences through experience about more of a gut instinct feel than around wine?
So the gut instinct thing kicks in a lot during vintage time. So I find that you're always trying to, and particularly I'll be moving back into that role again this year, where I'll be making some decisions or co-making the decisions of when to bring the fruit in. And so that a lot of that is gut feel based on the weather that's coming, how the berries that we've tasted in the vineyard at the time are looking, and perhaps I should have checked that back corner of the vineyard. Is it the right decision to make? So there's that gut feel, but in science and chemistry, in terms of maintaining wine quality throughout the whole time, it's always rolling around in the back of your head, that tank, it's been on ullage for a couple of days. Is that going to be okay, or do we need to get dry ice onto it? What's the next step in the process? You're always thinking. Even here in Sydney yesterday, I was sitting in our office in St Leonard's, and I was had my computer. I'm like, oh, that's right, this wine needs filtration because it's likely to come up for bottling in February. So you start doing something else, and and it's all about making the decisions based on that quality and the science and microbial knowledge. Of what's in the back of rolling around in the back of your head.
There's also the other term called the vibe.
The vibe, there is the vibe, and that's the great thing about our team at Peter Lehmann. Like, we've got 5 different winemakers that all bring a different vibe to the business, and we just, our vibe kicks in when it needs to. Some of us more on a Monday and some of us more on a Friday, but it's it definitely, there's a bit of vibe that goes on when it comes to vintage time. That's for sure. Because you're dealing with a lot of external issues, pressures.
We talked about your experiences throughout Australia. There must have been some really influential people then that have kind of taught you items, pieces of information. Who are they?
I think, I spent 12 years with Tim Adams in Clare, and Tim's a very passionate, very fastidious winemaker that clearly champions Riesling, has a great love of Shiraz and Cabernet as well, 2 other great varietals from Clare. And I think it's probably Tim that really taught me more about that attention to detail and that just being completely fussy until you're absolutely 100% happy with it, and then questioning yourself again, making sure that it's right where it needs to be. So, in terms of winemaking quality points of view, that's probably, Tim's been quite influential for me across that part of the journey. Prior to that, I think, there's every other winemaker that I've worked with has brought some new knowledge, some new understanding and a different aspect. The team I work with now, the 5 of us have combined 100 years of winemaking experience or more, and so we all have our strengths in particular areas, and you learn from those strengths that they might see that you don't, and you go, oh yes, I can see what you're looking at there, and from that you can try and bank that in a memory, add an extra chip in there, and you do thank all those people that help along your journey.
Does also make you think, I've done this in Clare, I'm going to try and do the same thing in Barossa, or you've kind of learned through that journey of, actually, I need to kind of read what I've got here.
No, there are certain things that I learnt along the way that I can take to the winemaking in the Barossa. Sometimes you have to look back at the styles of, say, Riesling, classic example, where Clare and Eden Valley are always loggerheads at who makes the best Riesling in Australia, if not in the world.
Who does?
I can't answer that. I'd upset too many people. I think, they're totally different styles in a way. You get so much more minerality and savoury character out of a Eden Valley Riesling. And then, you can't go saying, I've been making Watervale Riesling with blossoms and slatiness, and then go to the Eden Valley and try and do the same thing because, no matter what you look for, you may not get there. You've got to adjust your style to what is expected. And for us at Lehmann, we have our master's range of wines, which are pretty much set in stone. These are the characteristics of how this wine needs to look. So, I was told very early on in the Lehmann journey that don't go trying to change that overnight because this works and this is us. And you appreciate that for sure, no matter who you're working for.
And you've also given us a good segue because you're talking about Riesling. We've got a Riesling in front of us. So
Look at that.
we're going to try some wines and ask more questions, but I'll hold this up to the camera. It's the Hill and Valley 2025 Eden Valley Riesling from Peter Lehmann. Is there any interesting stories about this Riesling or tasting notes of the vintage itself?
2025 was a reasonably difficult vintage because it'd been so dry. So when we're heading into vintage time, a couple of blocks around the place in the Barossa, and it wasn't just Riesling, caught us by surprise. And you normally look at, say, right, about 9 by maybe we might start going out to the vineyard and tasting each day. This one's getting close, and we're looking for with Riesling, we're looking for that real lemon sherbet pop. So it'll be sort of malic acid, green, and then you'll next day wander out there and go, bang, there it is. Right, quick, we've got to pick this.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with our Semillon that goes in the Masters, Margaret Semillon. And I think 2025 was one of those years where because it was so dry, because it was so temperate, the window was so short. A lot of people around the place were really caught out in a few instances. So we're lucky enough to have a number of different options for each of these wines. So with Hill and Valley, this comes from one of 4 growers in our Eden Valley portfolio. And those growers are all trying to make Masters Wigan Riesling, which is our very top Riesling, one we age for 5 years in the bottle. But if they don't quite make Masters Wigan, there's still an opportunity to make the Hill and Valley style, which is quite similar to where Wigan starts its life. It's really quite linear acidity. It's got really nice lime and lemon freshness and quite crisp and pure in style. And you need that, particularly in Wigan, to make it last for 20, 25, 30 years. With Hill and Valley, all we're looking for there is just a little bit more of that blossom freshness, the lifted. In Clare, we would call it bath salts. In Eden Valley, it's more of a perfumey type aroma that you see. So once we see that, that's probably more of a Hill and Valley style than Wigan. And then, that's where Hill and Valley is. And Hill and Valley as a range is built to be approachable, friendly wines in style. You don't necessarily have to be an absolute expert to appreciate it, love it, look for it. But for us, it has to reek of Eden Valley. It has to be, this is what an Eden Valley Riesling looks like. So it should show that minerality, the sort of the influence of all the rock that's so close to the surface up there, the lack of water that's in Eden Valley, the small canopies. But it's all of that. And it's 25 is a great example. We're really, really happy with how it's looking.
Could you explain that, and also like how different Eden Valley is to Clare Valley? Because the acid profile really stands out in the difference between the two. But there is that softness there and that savory nature to it. You mentioned, what did you say, whiting? Whiting at the start? I could totally see that with this.
Yeah. And because whiting's such a non-fishy fish, that's why we all love it. It's really quite a if you want a pure wine, that's a pure fish to have, and the flavors are really quite delicate, and the Riesling characteristic, especially that lime and lemon, which a lot of people, first thing they do is squeeze a bit of lime and lemon on their fish
or oysters,
or oysters, is perfectly why Riesling goes so well.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about Peter Lehmann itself, and it's such an iconic brand. I don't know if everyone knows the story of Peter Lehmann, and I'm guessing you've got a good version of it. Do you want to share the story of Peter Lehmann?
Yeah, sure. It's a very interesting one, and there are some that you have to save. Some of the stories they save after dark when it comes to Peter Lehmann. There are some very funny stories. Okay. Peter Lehmann was larger than life. He was a community-orientated man. He was a 5th generation Boroson. So if you see our Boroson range out there, this is where that Boroson term comes from. Just like that's how he identified himself. Essentially, he finished school when he was 17 and came out of school not knowing what he was going to do. His father was a Lutheran pastor, and his father had connections and good friends with the Smith family.
Yeah, Yalumba.
Yalumba.
Yeah.
So Peter's first role was, don't stop sitting around it being a bum. Go out and work in the Yalumba. So he went to Yalumba and absolutely loved it. Just thrived. He worked his way through all of sort of the senior, up to senior management.
What years
position.
was this are we talking about?
When he was 17, this would have been 60s, 60s, yeah. So at the time, it was basically red wine centric. The Barossa was producing a lot of fortified wines and claret style table wines. He then ended up moving on to Saltram and worked there in the Saltram wine business, and he became the manager of fruit intake and general, managing winemaker there. So he was really in charge of gathering growers, creating those relationships, and then bringing the fruit into Saltrams. And they were at the time owned by a business called Dalgetty's. So there's a bit of shareholdery stuff going on there. Peter was told in the late 70s, he was with them, to go out and tell the growers that they couldn't take their fruit anymore because the wine industry was in a bit of a glut. All the tanks were full. Saltram didn't have a way to move that wine in order to run the business. And Peter says, I can't go and tell these people that we're not taking their fruit. Now, these are growers that have been there from the 1850s when the Barossa was settled. They're some of the original planters of the vines. And these families might have had some cattle or some sheep on the side, but grapes were their main income. So Peter was like, no, I'm not telling them this. Anyway, so Dalgetty's held firm. Peter held firm. So Peter was forced into finding a way of helping out his growers and under no obligation whatsoever to do anything, but except for his own persona. This is what he did. And he went out to the growers and said, look, I can't promise you that I can pay you for the fruit, but what we'll do is we'll make it into bulk wine. We'll put it together in tanks, and when we can, we'll sell it, and then I'll be able to get some money back for you. And he did that. He established a bulk wine business sort of thing overnight with a few investors, and then he sold a bit of the wine into a couple of the large retail chains. Saltram the next year got a hold of this and went, no, you can't be bringing their wine here and making it and then making yourself some money. So Saltram said, this year you're not processing with us at all. So Peter was forced to leave Saltram. He stood by his morals, stood by his growers, stood by his community in the Barossa and said, if we can't make this work, our industry is going to fold overnight. So he went and found the old Hoffman cellar, which was where our cellar door is now in the middle of Tanunda. It was a derelict winery which had been unused for some time. It was established in the late 1850s. So I had a bit of work to get it up and running. And when he did, he took a handful of people with him from Saltram. One of them was Andrew Wigan, his very first winemaker, the one our top Riesling's named after. Andrew, like a lot of the others, didn't know where their next paycheck was going to come from. They didn't know. All they knew is they were supporting Peter in this endeavour, and take that, Saltram. Like we're not going to stand for this. And they continued that business, and Peter Lehmann started what was called Barossa Masterson Vintners. And so our very top iconic wine that goes overseas, you see it occasionally, that we make out of French foudres is called the Masterson Shiraz, and it's a single vineyard, only released in particular years. This wine is about to be sort of relaunched locally, so keep an eye out for Masterson. But that's where Masterson comes from. And so Masterson Barossa Vintners was named after Sky Masterson, who was the gambler from Guys and Dolls, you know that. But Masterson was a gambler, and Peter was taking a big gamble by leaving his business. All the people that supported him and working for Peter from Masterson were taking a big risk as well. And this bold, courageous move that Peter made and the growers made, because they're like, well, gee, we don't know if Peter will have any success, was all supported by Peter's faith in the Barossa and his drive to protect the industry. And so, that's the sort of start of Masterson. And it was only a year or two later, in I think 81, that Peter Lehmann was sort of convinced to name the brand after himself. He was told that, look, you've got to take some credibility for what you've done here. You've got to put your name to this label. It's a sign of quality that, if you trust in it. And so he's like, oh, I guess so. Yeah. And so that then goes the story of Peter Lehmann from the early 80s. And here we are now 40-something years later, and some of those grower families, albeit their sons, daughters, nephews, nieces, now still bringing that fruit to us. But it gets better than that. So where it comes to where we can sort of be a step aside from a lot of other producers, or ahead of a lot of other producers, is that because we saved those growers, essentially, Peter was known as the saviour of the Barossa. Those growers partake in the vine pool scheme. So the South Australian government through the 80s paid people to pull their vines out. It's not productive anymore. Look for another industry, and these old vines still stayed in the soil. So now we have access to some of the oldest fruit, up to vines planted in 1893 that still come to the winery today. So we're pretty excited that Peter's left that legacy.
Is that exclusive to Peter Lehmann?
No, there are a number of other producers which have protected their patches. So there are still, there are nearly 150-year-old vines in the ground in areas in the Barossa. And there's actually an old vine charter Barossa Australia has developed alongside Andrew Kayard, and they've actually catalogued all of these old vines, the vineyards, where they are, what their age is, a little bit of history of when they were planted. And the Barossa itself has to actually get out there, and we've realised this, and actually promote the fact that we've got some of the oldest vines in the world. Unlike the eastern states, we haven't been hit by phylloxera, so we haven't had to replant. So those original rootlings are still, if we did get hit by phylloxera, it would be devastating, because a lot of those old vines on their own roots would be lost. But that's an edge that we really need to make more make more opportunities from, I think.
And make it known as well, right?
Yeah. People don't realise it. They're like, oh, New World Winery, Barossa, wine region.
Yeah.
And they still look to France and Italy for the old school classic wine industry history.
Yeah.
It's like, but they don't have the oldest vines in the world. So.
I actually thought Peter Lehmann was a lot older than 80s. I felt like it's been there for so long. It seems so iconic in the Barossa.
It is. And as well as iconic in the Barossa, I get to go overseas every September. And in the UK, you go to wine dinners or presentations of sorts, and someone will come up to you later and go, oh, I've got a bottle of the 1992 Stonewell and I've had it since. And Peter and Andrew Wiggin visited here when they were here and 20 years ago. Yeah. And, it's amazing how much recognition the brand has internationally. And that all comes back to the story, I think. There's a lot of wine brands don't have a story to tell. And ours is so authentic and real, and we're still living it today. It's we still honour those handshake deals for taking fruit, for example. It has to have a basic contract just to tick the box. But, those families are working with us almost as partners.
Yeah, I'm just going to build on one of your points you said before around the old vines that you have. What do you think the old vines do to the quality of the wine?
I think you get a real nice authentic savouriness from old vines, and it shows particularly well with something like Grenache, where we're making rosé from young Grenache vines. We're making lovely, fresh, vibrant, fruit-driven table wines from Grenache and Grenache blends in the mid-tier. But those old vines give you this real gnarly sense of savoury earthiness that you don't really get from those younger fruit-driven vines. And also, as the vines are aging, they're yielding less and less and less. And so they've still got those huge root networks underground and the big, thick trunks all holding carbohydrate. And as that fruit fullness drops off as they age, all of that carbohydrate is concentrating flavour and tannin and colour and just building bigger, stronger fruit profile, so that by the time you're making wines out of them, you've got some real ageability that comes from them. So it's a very important thing that old vines can provide, is that sense of long-lasting quality in wines, I feel.
Yeah. So Peter made that big bet back then, looked after the growers. Now the growers are looking after you. I guess that's also that special connection that is so important to Peter Lehmann.
Yeah, it is. And we've got our Growers Day actually, very shortly. And the growers are, they look forward to coming together. There's a big sense of competitiveness against them too. We've got a couple of Riesling growers that sort of go head to head just with a bit of banter constantly, because if they make a product like Wiggin, their fruit ends up in there, or if their Shiraz ends up in Stonewall, they get paid a bonus. And so they're all working really hard to try and put these wines together that are absolutely spectacular. And so when they come together at Growers Day, they're sort of egging each other on, going, I did this year, and it's a really nice community of growers. The winemakers, we all mingle with them throughout the day, generally have a good chat, and they get a good feel of being connected to the business, and we get a good feel of being connected to the vineyard. And I absolutely love vintage time. We've got a little post-it note with 5 or 6 wineries on it. It's like, right, who are we going out to today? And go out there and you razz one of them up, saying, where are the donuts? It's coffee time, like this, and they'll have a joke with you, and you build this real lovely camaraderie because you're working together to both achieve something. And if a winery's making too much money, the grower's not. And if the grower's making too much money, the winery's not. So it's got to be a beautiful balance, and that's the community that is Barossa.
I love that sense of community has carried on from when Peter started it to what it is now.
Yeah, it is. It's been lost through a lot of corporate ownership and corporate movement. But for us, we've always been a family-owned business. We're still family-owned, and we have this sense of family and sense of community, and understand that it's so important, particularly in a tricky industry at the moment, when you have to have that story, you have to have that connection, and you have to have a united front.
I'm curious, in addition to growers competing for showing you the best grapes, do they do a bit of wining and dining of the winemakers and go, I'll take you to coffee, you take care of me, I'll take care of you?
Yeah, no, unfortunately they don't actually. So like I said, the best I can potentially get out of them is a donut during the vintage visits. But no, that's we tend to lay a lot on for the growers, and we expect that the growers listen to our sort of guidance and direction and give us feedback that we can then listen to them as well. It's
it'd be good.
It'd be nice. It'd be nice actually. What happened to, we have Growers Day? Where's Winemakers Day?
Actually,
I'll take that back with me. we'll work on
Did
that.
they send photos? Go check out these grapes.
Yeah, I did. I will mention a good story with with our mate Bunger Hearn, William Hearn. He's one of our long-term Riesling growers, and he's often vying for either the Wigan or Hill and Valley spots with his Riesling. And he's a bit of a trickster. One growers day, he tried to call me while I was giving a speech to all the growers, and I didn't know because I'd done the right thing and turned my phone on silent. And he comes up to me afterwards and goes, Did your phone ring? What's going on? He was trying to trip me up. Anyway, so a couple of weeks later, the next vintage later, a lot of people were using sort of a sun cream spray to try and stop the vines from burning. And Bunger had tried this spray on. Anyway, Jade, our viticulturist, and I rocked up to the vineyard, got out of the ute, and I sort of had this horrified look on my face. And Bunger's there sitting on his little ATV waiting for us. And he's like, What's wrong? I said, Bunger, you can't use that spray. The wines can't go into Wigan if you use that spray on vines. He was horrified for a good 5 minutes. And then I let him go. It's just a joke, mate. You're okay. So it's important, these relationships where you can hang a bit of shit on each other. It's very important when you're growing up, but also when you're a senior professional winemaker and you're dealing with your...
you got to have fun.
Yeah. But you don't put the growers on the back of the bottle, right?
No, because it's that's a contentious issue. Yeah, we would be in trouble. We'd have to get back labels produced every year. So, change every year. So but no, we definitely do give them the credibility of that bonus, and then look after them well throughout the year.
Did you have other questions you want to ask, or should we jump into the rosé?
Let's jump into rosé.
This is probably the third time I've tried this one since it's been bottled.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to say today.
No, Black Queen was for breakfast.
Yeah. All right, I'll show this one. Here you go. So today we're going to try the Barossa Grenache Rosé 2025 from Peter Lehmann. And so you were saying Grenache is a good piece in the story. Anything interesting about this specific rosé?
So the Boroson Rosé is brand new, and it's something I've only really tried a couple of times since we bottled it. It's that fresh, and it's from vines that are growing around our winery property. So we have a very small amount of vineyard ourselves. So I was talking about growers. We've got about 80 growers, and they provide us about 700 different parcels of fruit each year. But there are little patches that we own ourselves, and this is one of them. The Machos vineyard brings us really quite youthful Grenache. It's only a handful of years old, and so it's perfect for this style of wine. And Grenache, like I've said, it shows its true form and it shows its age through the style of wine it makes. And so for us, Boroson is a label and a range of wines that needs to be, once again, thoroughly enjoyed, easily enjoyed by our consumers without having to think too much about them. They need to be, as the wise Tim Adams once told me, you want a wine like that to not create any conversation apart from, oh, that's really delicious. And the next thing you hear is, who's getting the next bottle?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the Boroson Rosé is designed to do. We've put it in this beautiful zebra bottle. It's the first, it's pretty rare for Peter Lehmann to use a special glass, but our team here in Sydney have really put together a beautiful looking package that draws you in. And in the wine, we've actually made with a little bit lower acidity than what a lot of other rosés are. So it actually helps to make it creamier, softer, plush fruits, and just really deliciously drinkable.
So how long have you released this Grenache Rosé for?
So 2025 is the first release of this product, and this has been in the market for maybe 2 months now. Pretty fresh.
Yeah.
So
what's the reason why you picked Grenache for the rosé? I see all these different other type of varietals they're using in rosé.
For us, we've got a lot of Grenache in the Barossa, and so we need to find a way to use that properly. And for us, the perfect fit is Grenache Rosé for the young vine material. I believe you can make a rosé out of nearly anything, and it really depends on where you're going from a flavour point of view. So for us, Grenache has those beautiful strawberries and cream characters, which is probably our house style. So we've always had a portrait Grenache, our portrait rosé. Grenache has been in the market for many years. So this is sort of modelled on the fact that, we've found great success with Grenache Rosé, and Boroson is just that different style that makes it a little bit more, bit fuller, richer. There's still some real fresh acidity there, but it's just really soft and luscious across the palate.
We were talking about vibe earlier. It is that kind of summertime vibe. Just open it up, relax, have a drink. Yeah,
it feels luscious, but it feels like kind of a steely mineral as well. It's not, I know, it doesn't feel very it's not sweet rosé.
No, it's certainly
it's
not
ve-
sweet.
yeah.
No, and we found that too. The rosé market's been heading more toward that Provence style, almost with no colour.
Yeah.
Really quite steely and quite acid driven.
Yeah.
Where this is just one step back from that. It's just got that tiny bit of residual sugar just to help lift that strawberries and cream character that we're looking for.
Mm.
So let's talk a bit about Barossa. And we went to Barossa 2 years ago, close to 2 years ago. Drove down, loved it over there. There was one pizza place, I can't remember where it was.
Epic.
Epic?
Yeah.
Was that the name, or you're saying
Epic
it was
Pizza.
Epic?
Oh, the pizza was epic.
Epic
Yeah.
Pizza. It was near
Penfolds?
near the
The
Penfolds.
old Penfolds.
Yeah, the old Penfolds. That's Ember pizza.
That's the one.
Ember.
Yeah.
Still think about that pizza, even now.
Yeah.
So I thought we'd play a quick game of the
Ooh.
best blank
Ooh.
in Barossa is this.
Oh.
And so we're going to give you a couple of blanks.
Okay,
And
okay.
You tell us which is the best.
All right. All right.
The best restaurant in Barossa is...
Well, the one. Gee, I'm going to upset a lot of people.
First thing that comes to mind.
First thing that comes to mind is Vintners in Anguston. It's known as the winemaker's haunch. It's where we go to take our interstate in and overseas visitors and other business people, and they do a fantastic menu, make it really easy, great service, great wine list, but allow you to take your own as well, which is perfect if you. But yeah, they've world class.
Okay. You got to book in advance, well in advance, isn't
Not
one of those?
too badly,
Yeah, okay.
not too bad. Yeah, the Barossa has quite a good food culture with a lot of different options nowadays. So yeah, it doesn't tend to be as flooded. We never really have an issue, but yeah, probably just dropped my name.
There we go.
No, not really at all. No, it's just we're just prepared more than a day out.
Okay.
Okay. Vintners and Anguston, is it?
Vintners and
Okay,
Anguston.
got it.
So that might lead on to the next one. The best dish in Barossa is
Oh,
it at Vintners or is that somewhere else?
well, I had a really, really, really good steak at Char, which is another great restaurant in Tanunda.
That's where we went, right?
Yeah, we went there.
You went to Char?
we went to
Yeah.
Char.
Just me and steak is just like, I love good
Gets
steak.
busy
and good
there, though.
Shiraz. It does, yeah. At Vintners, my favourite dish there is their scallops. So pan-seared scallops they put back into the shell and usually with a creamy sauce and
I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, hungry.
The best place to stay in Barossa is...
Oh, a nice quiet B&B somewhere. The Barossa, similar to Clare actually, have limited options in terms of, if there's a festival or something or other, you got to get in quick and get your accommodation. But I think that if you're coming to a wine region like ours, you have to find a nice little Barossa B&B somewhere. If you're in wintertime, one with a little open fire and you can really get that lovely heritage feel.
Yeah.
B&B is the way to go. The best place to get coffee in Barossa is...
Well, in the winemaking office, we have a lovely 2-group coffee machine that's serviced regularly with fantastic beans, which we import from Sydney, and we make some fantastic coffee ourselves. So I don't actually head out into the Barossa too much for coffee, but there are a number of different coffee bars in Tanunda which I never hear bad reports of.
Okay.
So I can't really list one from personal preference.
Last one. The best thing to do in the Barossa that is not wine related.
So we have a few. Recently I went, and it was very funny because I only just saw while I was here in Sydney, a news article about how hot air balloons are one of the most dangerous things you could go and do.
Yeah.
But hot air ballooning over the Barossa is absolutely spectacular. And I would encourage you to risk your life and do it.
That was a weird way to introduce something.
No, I think that we've got a couple of different companies in the Barossa. That's how popular it is. And I, for the first time, did it. When I was a kid, actually, one night after school, one landed on a hill opposite us, and friends and myself raced up the hill to say hello to them. They let us jump in the basket, and they took us from one hill to the other and dropped us off.
Wow.
So that was my first hot air balloon experience. But it wasn't until I was only a couple of years ago that I actually did a proper hour hot air flight with my wife for her birthday celebration, and that was absolutely brilliant. So just that stillness, the fog and mist through the valley and just floating silently across all the vineyards is spectacular. I'd recommend it for sure.
My fear of death probably is going to stop me from doing that. No.
Yeah.
Have you done it?
No. I want to.
Really? All right. That was it in terms of the best of questions. We did want to stay focused on Barossa, and like the question around terroir can be quite vast, but I don't know if you can isolate it down to the Peter Lehmann, where the growers are. What's special about the terroir for those?
So the Barossa has 14 distinct soil types. We were surrounded by the Mount Lofty Ranges. So that runs all the way from McLaren Vale up through the Adelaide Hills, Barossa Valley, and up through the Clare Valley. So it's a mountain range that's around 70 million years old.
Wow.
And so what's happened over those 70 million years is all the soil from up in Eden Valley has washed down into the Barossa. Eden Valley soils are then quite schisty and shallow, and they're quite rocky. So there's ironstone and quartz and granite and bits and pieces up there. But then that's made the valley quite fertile. So in the valley, there's grey cracking clay, there's yellow sands, there's red loam over red clay. It's a complete mix down the valley. So something like our Boroson Shiraz comes from probably nearly every soil type through the valley. So from as low as Williamstown and Lyndoch down the south, all the way through the central Barossa to the northern areas of Stockwell, Ebenezer, Light Pass. That wine is an essence of what the Barossa tastes like because it encompasses all of those different soil types. So our growers were very lucky are spread in all different areas of the valley. But our key focus area for our super premium reds tends to have become Light Pass and Ebenezer, which are right up the northern end. And when Peter Lehmann first started making our icon wine, the Stonewell Shiraz, it was named after our Stonewell Vineyard, which is only about a 3 or 4 minute drive from the winery towards Seppeltsfield. And he firmly believed that this soil type was perfect for making Barossa Shiraz. It was rich, dense, clay and loam, and it was really quite a good soil. But soon became obvious that the newer plantings and even some of the older plantings up toward Light Pass district were producing some pretty spectacular reds too. So between Peter Lehmann, Andrew Wigan, Peter Scholes, they set about acquiring all the vineyards, the east and western side of Light Pass Road from the south to the north. And now we focus our energy on the growers in that area quite particularly. That soil type is quite loamy. There are some big sand spots, but quite loam over a bit of clay. But then over the road, over the Sturt Highway, which sort of heads towards New South Wales, is the Ebenezer district, and that's all sort of quite yellow sand. The Mopper Springs runs underneath that, so there's some deep under subsurface moisture. And so in a wet year, we get really good fruit from more so the Ebenezer district because it's very well drained. And in a dry year, the Light Pass district tends to really perform well because the soil holds a bit more water. So it's all about having your risk spread, like any good business, across many different districts. And it doesn't mean that district is going to be better because of that example I've given. But that's just a generalisation of how that soil type in the Barossa is really quite important at determining how you spread your risk and make sure that even in the most horriblest of years, like 2011 and 2000, what was the other one? 2000, I just had a blank. 17, the wet 2023. You've got, it seems to be every 7 years anyway, that you've got an opportunity to make a good quality wine off a particular patch.
Yeah. You mentioned growers again. Like, is it all growers for Peter Lehmann, or is it also estate?
It's probably about 90% growers. Yeah. For us, we've got, like I said, a little bit of fruit around our winery in the Machos vineyard. We've got a little bit of fruit on the Janky vineyard, which is between Europe and Tanunda, toward the Tanunda end. And apart from that, we have a couple of vineyards in the Adelaide Hills. So we add a little bit of Adelaide Hills fruit to our portfolio through the Hill and Valley range and our sparkling. But that's generally about it. The rest we outsource from our grower families.
When you talk about that kind of like risk mitigation type of model, it feels like a bit like Penfolds like, where you have all the different growers around the area kind of bring together. I'm guessing you're kind of blending at different styles. Or is it like that type of model?
Yeah, it definitely is. We Penfolds have become less and less like that though, where we've sort of held on to that grower importance. And there are a lot of growers that have walked away from pricing deals, and we're like, well, that's not how we operate. We work on an average pricing across the years, and while pricing fluctuates, we'll just maintain a status quo and nice and steady. And so growers have often gone off going, I can get an extra such and such a ton for my fruit, so they go elsewhere. But we find that in a year or two's time, they're knocking on the door going, we've been dropped. Can we come back? And we're like, well, that's not really our philosophy. We're here to work together. So, you do have to look at a lot of that has happened throughout our industry, where the Lehmann way has always been, and under different ownerships, has always been to protect that particular relationship and work together.
So let's move on to the next wine. And so I'll hold it to the screen. It's a 2021 Mentor Cabernet Sauvignon from Barossa. And so which area was this from? Ebenezer or?
So Mentor in 21, if my memory serves me correctly, came from Rudiger family and potentially a little bit, where else would that have come from? Can't quite remember. But generally, it is our very best parcel of Cabernet, and it often does come from that northern area of the valley. It is picked from maybe 40 to 50 different parcels of Cabernet that are delivered to us each year. And this is part of our Masters series of wines. So each of the wines in the Masters, and there's the Wigan Riesling, the Margaret Semillon, the Eight Songs Shiraz, and the Mentor Cabernet. And this one's named after Peter Lehmann. So in honour of him mentoring so many important winemakers throughout his career, he really helped to grow the industry and support people to learn more and to find their winemaking passion. And so, and funnily enough, Peter, he believed strongly and firmly that Shiraz from the Barossa was the best Shiraz in the world. And he literally had Shiraz running through his veins. And so when they came to name the Mentor Cabernet, they thought it would be hilarious to name it after Peter.
Because he's a Shiraz man.
Because he's a Shiraz man. So Dougie, his son, who's sadly not with us either anymore, but Dougie named this after Peter, and we've stuck with that. So it sees around 25% new French oak for about 15 months. It's, like I said, the best Cabernet we find from our classification each year of the vintage, and it generally is a soft sort of red berry style. So where your traditional Cabernets have that herbaceous edge and sometimes can be a little bit green and with really hard dry tannins, the Mentor we find is coming off some newer clone material. So we're working quite hard to work on separating our new clones from old clones. So these new clones come from, say, South Africa, new areas of France, Western Australia. And a lot of our growers are starting to change over their clone to these newer clones because they deliver more fruit robustness, richness, softer tannin, more elegance in style, which suits us down to a T. That's exactly where we want to be. And we laugh in the winemaking office sometimes saying, we want to make our Cabernet look like Shiraz. So this is one step toward doing that. You still obviously get those varietal characters there, but Mentor is just an ultimately delicious wine. Part of the Masters program is to age them we aim for about 5 years in the cellar before release. So we bottle this after 15 months of oak maturation, lay it down in the cellar. This is only 21, it's quite young because we had great success with the 19 and 20 in market. But we're working at trying to bring this back toward that 5-year mark again.
On the nose, I smelled like chalk mint, like dark chalk mint straight away.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's quite strong today.
It was actually, as we were sitting here, I could smell a wine that was like permeating everywhere. And it was it's quite strong in the aroma. Yeah.
It's very well lifted.
And it's definitely not Shiraz.
No. I say that with tongue in cheek about the Shiraz joke,
But it's got those green notes of a cab, but not as much as what you'd experience.
Yeah, that's why I say it's kind of dark chocolate, has a bit of that bitterness to it.
Yeah.
And spice as well. Yeah.
So like sort of edgy tannin characteristics, but not the drying.
Yeah.
So it's just that's a good example of our house style of Cabernet.
Yeah.
And the Barossa is actually our second highest planted variety is Cabernet.
Yeah.
But on the world stage, it's Shiraz, but we actually make fantastic Cabernets for the Barossa. And I implore people to give Barossa Cab a go if you're a Cabernet fan.
Yeah. Which is good because I think people have the impression around Barossa, bit Cabernet or Shiraz is this big, full-bodied, juicy, jammy type of wines.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that wrong in terms of thinking that way?
Oh, certainly is now. For Peter Lehmann, I think that's always set us apart differently too. So our top Stonewell Shiraz, our very best Shiraz of the vintage, selected from up to 150 parcels, is rich, ripe, full-bodied, but also elegant at the same time. And some of those early Stonewell Shirazes, when people were making that jammy style that is often 16 to 16.5% alcohol, Peter Lehmann's Stonewell back in the 2000s and into the 90s were sometimes around 13 to 13.5%. So it's always been about delicacy of fruit and making sure that the fruit is picked when the flavors are at their peak, not looking to try and make something bigger by hanging it out there and overripe as long as you can, and then preserving that delicate fruit expression all the way through the winemaking. So even as a child, younger fella, I understood that this was the brand direction. I've had family that have worked through Peter Lehmann and, tasted a few of the wines, and always quite appreciated how the fruit was number one, and the fruit picking at the right time was very important in order to make sure that you had fruit ripeness without the heaviness and the over ripeness.
Which is important because, again, I say before, like Peter Lehmann is iconic to Barossa, but then it's not traditional Boroson, big, juicy, jammy. It has a bit more restraint to it and your own certain style.
Yeah, that's right. And that's always sort of separated us. I don't know if it's been that well communicated by the brand, because, yes, we are staple Barossa. We're in that cookie cutter Barossa mold, but the wines are a little bit out of that shape. They're more down the refined, elegant style.
Yeah. The other question I've got is, we've gone through a few different ranges now, Hill and Valley, Masters. Feels like there's a lot of different ranges and diversity around Peter Lehmann. Is that something that's Peter Lehmann trying to do?
Yeah, so Peter goes back to his love of Shiraz, but there's no point putting the same Shiraz under 4 different labels and then trying to sell the same thing, which some people do. We tend to make sure, and it's a definitive winemaking rule, this wine must look different to the others. So Hill and Valley gives the winemakers a little bit of wriggle room. So we can actually look at the styles. So our team participates in wine show judging throughout the year. We also attend as many tastings as we can. We run our own little internal benchmarking tastings this time of year. Actually, we choose 2 varieties, and each winemaker has to collect a dozen wines, and we taste through. And what we're looking to do is find out what the styles are doing in market. We're always talking to people, always trying to gauge a bit of an opinion on what people want in their Shiraz. So Hill and Valley allows us to do that. So particularly the Chardonnay, which I tend to sort of take on as a bit of a passion project of mine, and always tasting these different styles and going, right, how do we slightly tweak ours to head in the right direction? So that's what Hill and Valley does. So the Hill and Valley Shiraz is quite fresh, fruit-driven, fresh, bright acidity, and a really youthful wine. It's really quite purple in the glass. Where you move to something like Boroson, and as I said, it encompasses all the Boroson soil types, a little bit more of a traditional style, but it's soft, very soft tannin, very plush fruit. It's a lovely, just delicious little number. When you move to 8 songs in the Masters range, this is where we get a little bit more serious about Barossa and oak use and complexity. But all this time, the yield's also decreasing. So you're moving from maybe 10 tonnes to the hectare at the sort of portrait Barossa and Hill and Valley range, right down to maybe just 2 tonne to the hectare or so for Stonewell. So very low yields mean the concentration of fruit's higher. The oak use is a little bit prevalent there just to balance the fruit out, and you're finding that the wines are a bit more traditional in style up the top end. And then Stonewell, of course, is basically black in its in its colour and its characteristics. It's still lovely, elegant, fine bone tannin, but it's got some real depth and richness of fruit that really pops, so it's about separating your different products to make sure that no one can say, well, I'll just taste the Hill and Valley because it's the same as Stonewell and $80 cheaper. It's about being able to market different styles, and you can't tar the Barossa with one brush for Shiraz. It's like, look at all the different things we can do. Shiraz makes great rosé, Shiraz makes great fortified, and everything in between.
So it is different vineyards, different terroirs. It kind of goes into the different ranges. It's not so much of same vineyard, but the poorer quality fruit goes into this wine and the better quality fruit goes into that wine.
Not quite based on the quality of the vineyard, more of the vineyard practices, the vineyard yield, the age of the vineyard. So we generally know our vineyards from our growers quite well, and that we can actually classify them pretty well before vintage. So they get different base rates depending on how that vineyard has performed in the past, but they're expected to maintain that standard. And at the same time, we're working hard with our standard fruit growers in order to try and push them up toward the higher level wines. So that's a big thing about what we're doing. It's all about education. Jade, our viticulturalist, is constantly on the phone. She can talk underwater with a mouthful of marbles, and she makes sure that she is in good contact with these people, all of our growers, so that they know what they can do in order to try and meet a higher standard. And then, pressure then comes back on the winemakers to make sure we meet that higher standard and maintain it. So it's quite a good ladder of expectation.
Is that sometimes hard for the expectation? Like you might go, oh, we want to be more sustainable and less sprays, and they go, I can't.
Yeah, we can at the same time. Yeah. So as a big company, we've managed to achieve Sustainable Wine Growing Australia status.
Yeah.
So we've managed to get all of our growers pretty well on board, or pretty well enough to get them on, or almost there. But we've got over the point where we've gone through enough audits with them that we're now sustainably certified. Some of these growers don't have an iPhone. They don't have a computer. They don't, they still have the old dial-up phone.
You're still faxing them as well, right?
We tried to remember how to use it. We're better off to send the carrier pigeon in the Borossa. But at the end of the day, like, we've worked really hard to get that story, that message through, because it is such a big thing, sustainable growing and making sure that you're looking after the land that you're custodians of. And so it's really important for us to maintain that sustainability piece.
Now, you're talking earlier about variety, and this is showing that variety. So it's the Black Queen Sparkling Shiraz 2020 vintage. Why Black Queen? Why is that the name?
So Peter and Margaret Lehmann were always big fans of the arts, whether it's paintings, musicals, theatre, whatever it was. So they had this artistic flair about them, and they liked to name things after something with meaning. This one's actually named after the Queen of Sheba. So I'm not exactly sure of the back history of why Peter was quite passionate about that, but it might have something to do with the way that the wine evolved. And that was that it was a bit of a fun experiment. It was a bit of let's make at the time you could call it champagne. So let's make a Shiraz champagne. And it became a raging success, and it sort of honed that Australian style of sparkling Shiraz or sparkling reds. And it wasn't until I started doing a bit more travel overseas for work that I realised how unique that is to Australia. And the Black Queen has become a bit of a benchmark style for people to try to achieve. With neighbours in the Barossa that make a very similar good quality sparkling Shiraz, and they use similar techniques to us. So it's something that we're quite proud of, that a bit of an industry leading type product, and it's got so much recognition around the world. It's just something really quite special and different.
Are you saying that there's not many people around the world that are doing sparkling reds?
No.
It's just an Aussie thing.
Yeah. And
I didn't know that.
You go to the UK, this would be absolutely perfect for your climate, for your weather, and they're like, and you pour them a glass, and they go, oh, it's got bubbles in it. What? Like,
it's
what's going on? Should I serve this cold or warm or hot or what are we doing with it? So it's really quite a unique phenomenon.
And I was really curious about that international following. So is the international crowd picking this up and going, yes, we want to try this, or the Lehmann range overall? How is there such a big international following? What's happened?
Well, Peter was one of those original Australian winemakers that headed over to the UK in particular, driving our wines. And he invested hours and hours and days on ends, and Andrew Wigan with him, and then after him, all just trying to paint the Australian and Aussie wine picture. And it wasn't necessarily driving just Peter Lehmann, but Peter was there to show Peter Lehmann, the Barossa, Australia, and what we do. And they're a group of winemakers that our whole industry should be very grateful for, that invested so much time and effort doing that throughout the 80s, 90s, that really put us on a bit of a world stage. And if there's one market in the world that really has an affinity for Australian wine, it's the UK. Yeah. They're not so much blindsided by the history and heritage of the old world countries. They are willing to try new things and love that Australian freshness, love our clean green image. And it's similar in Asia, like they love the clean green image that Australia posts and does so well. We need to keep building on that though as a community overseas in all markets. But yeah, sparkling Shiraz, it's amazing how people went, oh, I've seen that in my local wine store and I've tried it once, but that was years ago, and then they ran out of stock, and it's like, we've actually had trouble getting stock over there to keep it on the shelves, and so it's been a bit sporadic, but we're working hard to improve that so that it's always available, because people look for it at celebratory times like Christmas and Easter, and it's quite popular. Like
So the French can have champagne, and we'll have sparkling Shiraz.
I think that, I think that that's probably a good trade-off. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, even though Australia is making some of the best sparkling whites, I find fresh and flavourful.
Yeah. What do you look for in the sparkling Shiraz? Because for me, it tastes like I think bubbles is going to be fun, but it actually tastes like a serious sparkling Shiraz.
And it is serious. So when the winemakers will go through our classification process in maybe May or June, when all the wines are finished, Malo, and then we judge them blind for a week to come up and narrow maybe up to 150 parcels down to the top 10 or top 8. And this is the one that sits in the top 8, but we're selecting, by the time we get to there, we select based on the style. So Stonewall is picked first as the wine that has the biggest, most integrated, mature tannin with some strong fruit presence that will hold the oak quite well. And then we're looking at the other end of the spectrum out of those 8 wines that are left in front of us for something that's soft with low tannin, but bright blue and red fruits, and that becomes our 8-song Shiraz. And it's then aged in some old oak, and what that does is further soften the tannins through the oxidation, but doesn't give it a lot of oak flavour itself. And after 12 months, we then send it off to tirage, and it's actually a method champenois, so it's a traditional method, and it's actually aged on lees for 3 years. So that further softens that big, bold Shiraz tannin and character. And then the kicker is after 3 years at disgorgement for our dosage, we use a very small amount of vintage fortified. So that's where you get that beautiful Christmas cake. I have to kill you now that I've told you that. Sorry, that's a trade secret. Just
Edit
no, not serious. No, that's fine. And that what that does is really help to lift the red berry fruits and provide that Christmas cake fruit, spice, cinnamon, nutmeg type character that you see.
That's what's unique about it, actually, because I haven't had a red sparkling like that flavor profile, and I reckon that's the trade secret. I shouldn't have said it.
No, it's fine to know. It's quite well known, and in fact, it's actually building that extra layer of complexity that makes it a little bit more interesting than just a sparkling red. It's got all of that going on.
It's definitely like more on the herbal side when I smell it. Aniseed comes through.
Aniseed. I was thinking sarsaparilla.
And then it reminds me of that time I went to Marseille and had pastis, like that kind of
I remember
aniseed, cloves kind of coming through.
Yum.
But I just think about, the cloves in the ham. Like this is like the glazed ham. Sparkling Shiraz.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like it's we'll have a 6-pack ready for Christmas Day. We might have a 6-pack at Easter time. It's or if we're going out on a Friday night after work, it's been a hard week and we just want to have something that's really quite delicious to perk us up. Let's put a bottle of sparkling Black Queen out of the fridge.
Beautiful.
I was curious because I thought this would have been done before the Cab Sav, and you said to do it at the end. And what was the reason behind it?
Well, that's a really good one. Everyone approaches it differently because it is a wine that you can have at breakfast time with your bacon and eggs. Not that I condone irresponsible drinking at that time of the day.
Well, you had it with food. So
with food, that's fine. Yeah. Or you can have it at an entree, as with your canapes on arrival. You can have it with a big, bold, rich char-grilled steak as a main, or you can have it with your cheese platters or your caramelized desserts. It's such a versatile wine that it is hard to say, well, where in the flight should I show it? But I just thought today would be a really nice one to finish on to give you that that generosity of what Peter Lehmann's all about. This is something special that we want to share and share with friends.
I think eggs with black sausage would also go really well with this.
Black sausage? Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, I'd give it a go.
Yeah.
Is that what
we did a breakfast on the grill episode? I think you had that on there. Now and we are towards the tail end of the interview. And so if we think about any key messages, anything in the future coming up that you want to share with our audience.
Yeah, sure. So we have a huge emphasis on innovation. So we have a whole team that all they work on here in Sydney is how we can innovate and make our brand, or maintaining our heritage and history, whilst at the same time being front runners in the industry. As a large family-owned business, you need to be leading by example. And so for us, it's really maintaining those wines in a style that's suitable to our audience, and that's where Hill and Valley, Boroson really important. We keep our Mentor, our Stonewall, our Master Series wines essentially for our tradition, heritage, heritage and a real classic. This is what Barossa is all about. And a nod to the head to our history and heritage. But at the same time, we're really maintaining a sustainable drive through our viticulture, ensuring that we're working with our growers to make sure that they are minimal tilling, making our soil microbial health a high priority, ensuring that because we all have minimal water to use, we're using drip irrigation, we're using soil probes that are telling us when and when not to water so that we're maintaining that precious resource and using it when it's most important. We have growers, the Schrappel family who have been with us for many years, who have a worm farm. And what they do is they make a worm tea. I called it a worm iced tea the other day. That was probably a little bit...
Worm tea?
It was just natural.
Is it using worm juices?
Yeah, we must... Yeah. Don't ask me the questions of how it's done, but the worm juices are then injected back into the drip line.
Oh, okay, not into the wine.
We don't drink it. No, it doesn't go to the wine. No,
Oh my God.
That's gone way too far down the sustainability track for my liking. Whoops. So the worm tea actually provides rich nutrition back to the vine. So they then inject it into the irrigation lines and it returns that back to the soil. Just simple things like mulching and looking after under vine and minimal spraying where possible. Schrappels also haven't used pesticide sprays for 20 years. Use natural pests, what are they called?
Pesticides.
Natural pests that target your pests.
Yeah.
Yes. I know what you're saying. I
You
don't know the term.
the words? We've worked on this before.
Some biodynamic thing as well? I don't know.
Let's go with that.
That's right. So I guess moving forward, we just as a company need to be very, very mindful of sustainability targets and ensuring that there's an industry there that can withstand the low times as well as enjoy the high times, but also make sure that our community is protected, because that essentially is the nuts and bolts of what Peter Lehmann's all about, is people.
Yeah. Great message. Trent, any last reflections?
The last reflections is, I always thought of Peter Lehmann as that kind of iconic name. Didn't really know about wines that much. Always think that big fruit, kind of full-bodied, kind of jammy type of wine. But the things that kind of stood out with today's discussion is around community. That's still family-owned, very much supporting the growers, and also sustainability as well. And I think that it's Barossa, but it's not as you know it. And looking back at the 1980s where Peter Lehmann made the big bet with the growers, I think it's also good to take a bet now with Peter Lehmann and try their wines and enjoy their wines as well. So I think it might surprise you.
Yeah, thanks.
I was just thinking the whole story of what Peter Lehmann's done and kind of the heroics and the surviving nature of it, that still stands out in what you and the business are doing today. You can see it in the range of the wines that you're doing. You're not sticking to just your reds and staying down that line. You're trying other tactics, making things very drinkable, which is fantastic. We can see it in your diversification around the vineyards and so forth. So it seems like there's a culture of survival in the organization. It is.
Yeah. And that's our current brand message. We're there to drive bold, courageous wines, bold, courageous people, and a real story around survival, protection, community. And it's what Peter always designed the business to be. And even today, we're about generosity and richness of style. We have a unique proposition that is internationally renowned and one of the highest award-winning wineries in Australia. But at the same time, we don't forget our roots. We're still there to take care of our grower families and work together as a team.
Perfect. Brett, thanks for your time and coming on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been great fun.
For our audience out there, go check out Peter Lehmann Wines. You can go on their website, peterlehmannwines.com. Check out all of their range there. That's us here at The Wind Up. As we like to say here, drink more, try more, learn more. Thanks all.